more like Jesus. In his name, amen. And now, in honor of this being Academy Sunday, I'd like to start this message with a children's book. Teachers know that there can be great wisdom found in children's books, right? Have you ever heard of the book, There's No Such Thing as a Dragon? There's No Such Thing as a Dragon, I believe was first published in 2001. It's a story of a boy named Billy Bixby, and when I was looking to be able to find some images to have on the PowerPoint as I told you the story, I found that somebody had narrated the book in about a 3-minute clip, and so today I'm going to let you see There's No Such Thing as a Dragon to start the message.
There's no such thing as a dragon. Billy Bixby was rather surprised when he woke up one morning and found a dragon in his room.
There's no such thing as a dragon. Billy Bixby was rather surprised when he woke up one morning and found a dragon in his room. It was a small dragon, about the size of a kitten. The dragon wagged its tail happily when Billy patted its head. Billy went downstairs to tell his mother.
"There's no such thing as a dragon,"
said Billy's mother, and she said it like she meant it. Billy went back to his room and began to dress. The dragon came close to Billy and wagged its tail, but Billy didn't pat it. If there's no such thing as something, it's silly to pat it on the head. Billy washed his face and hands and went down to breakfast. The dragon went along. It was bigger now, almost the size of a dog. Billy sat down at the table. The dragon sat down on the table. This sort of thing was not usually permitted, but there wasn't much Billy's mother could do about it. She'd already said that there was no such thing as a dragon, and if there's no such thing, you can't tell it to get off the table. Mother made some pancakes for Billy, but the dragon ate them all. Mother made some more, but the dragon ate those too. Mother kept making pancakes until she ran out of batter. Billy only got one of them, but he said that's all he really wanted anyway. Billy went upstairs to brush his teeth. Mother started clearing the table. The dragon, who was quite as big as Mother by this time, made himself comfortable on the hall rug and went to sleep. By the time Billy came back downstairs, the dragon had grown so much he filled the hall. Billy had to go around by way of the living room to get to where his mother was.
"I didn't know dragons grew so fast,"
said Billy.
"There's no such thing as a dragon,"
said his mother firmly. Cleaning the downstairs took Mother all morning, what with that dragon in the way and having to climb in and out of windows to get from room to room. By noon, the dragon filled the house. Its head hung out the front door, its tail hung out the back door, and there wasn't a room in the house that didn't have some part of the dragon in it. When the dragon awoke from his nap, he was hungry. A bakery truck went by. The smell of fresh bread was more than the dragon could resist. The dragon ran down the street after the bakery truck. The house went along, of course, like a shell on a snail. The mailman was just coming up the path with some mail for the Bixbys when their house rushed past him and headed down the street. He chased the Bixbys' house for a few blocks, but he couldn't catch it. When Mr. Bixby came home for lunch, the first thing he noticed was that the house was gone. Luckily, one of the neighbors was able to tell him which way it went. Mr. Bixby got in his car and went looking for the house. He studied all the houses as he drove along. Finally, he saw one that looked familiar. Billy and Mrs. Bixby were waving from an upstairs window. Mr. Bixby climbed over the dragon's head, onto the porch roof, and through the upstairs window.
"How did this happen?"
Mr. Bixby asked.
"It was the dragon,"
said Billy.
"There's no such thing as..."
Mother started to say.
"There is a dragon.
Billy insisted.
A very big dragon."
And Billy patted the dragon on the head. The dragon wagged its tail happily. Then, even faster than it had grown, the dragon started getting smaller. Soon, it was kitten size again.
"I don't mind dragons this size. Why did it have to grow so big?"
said Mother.
"I'm not sure, but I think it just wanted to be noticed,"
said Billy. The end.
And then it cost $30,000 to move the house back onto its property. What's the book about? dragon. On a kid level, I think the book is about, it's about a book about a cute dragon who wants to be noticed because kids want to be noticed. Because there's a certain element to being a kid that you don't feel like you're noticed, and so they can identify with it. And it's a little bit empowering for kids because, you know, you can be noticed. But on another real level, the story is about, and I believe intentionally on an adult level, it's about denial. It's about the importance of paying attention to our inner dragons to keep them in check, and how denial doesn't help anyone. Or it's about avoiding the things in our relationships that start small, that we pretend are not there, but then that grow and knock the walls of our lives off of their foundation. I'm reading a book called 12 Rules for Life, 12 Rules for Life, by a psychologist, Jordan B. Peterson. It's a new book, and it's already Amazon's #1 bestseller in this category. Peterson is a former assistant professor at Harvard University, so strong. He now teaches at University of Toronto, and he has continued until just the last year to write his own clinical practice. He was practicing psychologist. He is a Christian, but not in an evangelical way that most of us would consider ourselves. He's written another book called The Architecture of Belief, The Architecture of Belief, which is a scholarly book that's about how human belief and ideologies affect and shape society and culture. In 12 Rules for Life, he uses the illustration of the book of the dragon as an illustration for a pattern that he sees in our relationships. And listen to what he says about it. Chaos emerges in a household bit by bit. Mutual unhappiness and resentment pile up. Everything untidy is swept under the rug, where the dragon feasts on the crumbs. But no one says anything, as the shared society and negotiated order of the household reveals itself as inadequate or disintegrates in the face of the unexpected and threatening. Everybody whistles in the dark instead. Communication will require admission of terrible emotions: resentment, terror, loneliness, despair, jealousy, frustration, hatred, boredom. Moment by moment, it's easier to keep the peace. But in the background, in Billy Bixby's house, and in all that are like it, the dragon grows. One day it bursts forth in a form that no one can ignore. It lifts the very household from its foundations. Then it's an affair, or a decades-long custody dispute of ruinous economic and psychological proportion. Then it's the concentrated version of the acrimony that could have been spread out tolerably, issue by issue, over the years of the pseudo-paradise of the marriage. Every one of the 300,000 unrevealed issues which have been lied about, avoided, rationalized away, hidden like an army of skeletons in some great horrific closet, bursts forth like Noah's flood, drowning everything. There's no ark because no one built one, even though everyone felt the storm coming. Did you catch it? It's just profound. The connection and the idea in this one chapter. He's saying when issues or problems happen in a marriage, in a relationship, in a home, sometimes we avoid. We avoid addressing the problems, sometimes chronically. We're quietly unhappy and relationships are unhealthy. We don't work to negotiate a better way to face those problems and address those problems. Sometimes we do it just to keep the peace. Sometimes it's because we face someone who is selfish and won't communicate and cooperate. Sometimes it's because of the issues that we have in our marriage. Sometimes it's because we brought the issues we brought into the marriage because of our parents or because of our past. Sometimes it's because we think it's the right thing to do. It's the Christian thing to do. Just accept it. Sometimes it's because we can't fight the power that somebody has with their anger, their tyranny, the money, or fear. And then little by little, the brokenness, the dysfunction grows. We want to avoid it. We're afraid of it. We deny that it's even there until one day it erupts and everything that's never been worked through collapses down in chaos. It just occurred to me to say, if you're younger, still pay attention, because this is kind of good for your future, to listen to this and put it away. And for today in different ways. When I was reading the story of the dragon and the way that it's just an illustration for this idea, I thought of Job's Leviathan. Job's Leviathan, do you know what that is? Do you know the book of Job? How in the book of Job, his life descended into chaos because of tragedy and loss. And a few times he makes a reference to this unknown creature that at one point it seems to be a watery creature. It's called Leviathan. And he kind of speaks about it being a devourer of everything that he has lost. And I kind of see that as like, yeah, now I understand why Leviathan is in Job. That's what that means. There are such things as dragons. They are real. In my experience, I find this to be a real issue that I see in relationships, in my family, my own relationships, other people in the church, in our marriages, in our relationships with siblings, with our adult children, or with children, adult children and their parents. This is a dragon's artery. I do some marriage counseling, and one of the things that I have known for many, many years now is that there is a pattern. And it happens about 10 years. They used to say it was 7 years, 7-year itch. It's 10 years. At 10 years, or sometimes when we're Christian, it gets delayed to 15 years. The couple come to me because one of the couple has decided they're done. And they are immovable. And now the other one is willing to come try and get some help. The one of the couple is done because they have been living with the dragon in their home for years and years. And it has grown and grown. They have wanted to resolve some things, or they were just as dysfunctional and they just couldn't make it happen. They wanted to negotiate, they couldn't get cooperation, or they were just as, bad of a person as is, because that's a realistic thing to say. And now it's gotten to the point where the dragon has grown and it has knocked the house off its foundation. And the house is going down the road. There might be, it might be the unresolved issue of intimacy that started out good in the marriage. You couldn't wait till every day getting home to be with one another at night. But for some reason, then it grew to being less frequent until it was 2 or 3 times, once every 2 or 3 months. And now it's been 6 months. And maybe that was because maybe she was unhappy when it declined, or maybe she really liked that it declined because he was selfish and terrible. But they never worked through that. Or he has an issue with women because of all the rejection that he faced before they got together early in his life, and it's deep-seated. Or she has an issue with men because of the way her father treated her mother, and they never worked through that together. Or maybe there's no closeness or communication or friendship, and they were lazy or cowardly, or one person was tyrannical and just would not change. They didn't negotiate a better way. And one of them has been doing the right thing for 10 years, but now they're done. All some of us have to do for this to happen is nothing. Don't notice, don't react, don't discuss it, don't attend, don't listen, don't work for peace, don't take responsibility. One of the reasons that we avoid doing these things and working on these issues as they continue to come up in a normal marriage is because we're afraid. We're afraid that if we poke the dragon, it might get worse, and it just might. But maybe working through these things might not be as bad as we might be afraid they are. I sometimes have a difficult relationship with one of my grown children. When they were a teenager, we had conflict often, and I don't want to have conflict with them at all now, ever. I was going to say they, now I just tipped it a little. He's grown, and I don't have that role, so I want freedom, but we still have frequent issues about responsibility and communication. And just this week, I have been avoiding addressing something that he really needed to do because I didn't want to fight. I didn't want the pushback. But when I brought it up to him, it started with pushback. But then we negotiated a way for him to fulfill his responsibility. And to my surprise, he stepped up and not only fulfilled his responsibility, but communicated to me about it, and then was very respectful, and that led to further positive communication about other things, as it often does. When you have a win, it kind of makes things good. I thought that there was a tiger hiding in the woods on that issue, making the noise. But it turns out it was really just a squirrel. I also see this truth in my marriage in kind of a backhanded way, which some of you might identify with. This week I did a funeral for Ruth Lynn. Ruth is the one who used to sit in the back, I believe, in the 9:30 service, and she had oxygen for 10 years there. And Carol Champini said at her funeral that she called her Queenie because everybody would come back to pay homage to her. But that was just because people knew that she was nice and friendly, but she couldn't get up and around. And one of Ruth's granddaughters talked to me about how she admired her grandparents' relationship because she believed that they never ever fought. And knowing Don and Ruth, I could see how that might be possible, that they rarely fought, because they were both agreeable, kind, and loving, and they might have been, passive in a different way, but it's absolutely not possible that they never fought. She just never saw it. But my children are never going to be saying that to the pastor that's doing my funeral. They're just not. They're not going to be saying that. Because my wife and I have bumped heads a lot in our marriage, especially when we were younger. It's honestly gotten progressively better, but it's not easy. But the thing is, in light of this, I think it's a good thing that we have always worked out our disagreements. We have always worked on our issues. The fact that we sometimes lose our temper is not a good thing, but it's because we are working on our issues. Raising kids is hard. We frequently disagree. We just had different styles. My style was to try to be the reasonable one. to be reasonable, sorry, that just came out. That came out wrong. I meant to be the reasonable disciplinarian, and my wife, in her love and her she wanted to defend that. So she was frequently defending them, and that would frequently lead. We just had different styles on discipline, so that's one of the things that we always kind of bumped heads on, but we both stayed in there. We always tried to figure it out on the one issue. And I was wrong. I would lose my temper, and you try to keep anger out of it, and she would be correcting me, and she was right on those things. But I didn't check out and say, good, then you go take care of them. And then there's a dragon, a little dragon in our house, where the kids resent me for not being engaged. And she's the one taking care of them entirely. We stayed involved. We always worked toward peace. We were always, after the dust settled, they're asking, how can we fix this? How can we make this better? And we just had to work and grow and learn and love. And so now we can say that it's better than ever. She keeps saying, you're so much better than you were before. And I'm like, wait a minute, what is that? I don't know that I was so bad. And so much better that, we can go on vacation, like a vacation of a lifetime we went on a couple of weeks ago. And it was an adventure that we shared because we're good friends, and we had an adventure together, exploring a little of France and Spain, and we loved it. And what I think the wisdom of this experienced professional and this, I don't like to preach about a book, but I'll get to scripture. But this is good truth. The wisdom that this person is sharing, that I am now sharing with you, is that it's good to work through all those issues. It's good to work on the chronic ones. It's good to work on the difficult ones. It's good to communicate and negotiate without disagreements and arguments, but if that's how it works for you, but that's kept you in it together, and you've done all those little battles, just helped you stay in it together, then hooray for the little battles. Hooray for the little battles, right? Because it's not good to avoid and deny, because that can lead to issues growing and compounding and then disrupting. About this issue, I think that Jesus would say, Matthew chapter 5, therefore, if you're offering your gift at the altar, that was their worship, they would bring a sacrifice, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, or any other person you have a relationship, they have something against you in your relationship, leave that offering there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them, then come and offer your gift. If you know things aren't right, Jesus says, go. He tells us, don't avoid your problem. Don't avoid the conflict. Don't avoid the issue. Don't deny that there's an issue. Go and be reconciled. If you know they have something against you, you go and initiate it. And it's amazing that he says it takes precedent and priority over your worship of God. He's intentionally putting those things in juxtaposition to tell you how important he wants us to view our responsibility to initiate reconciliation with people in our relationships. And then in a similar passage, he flips it with this, it's similar, but it's got a significant difference. Matthew 18, if your brother or sister or anybody else you have a relationship with, because that is generally what he's saying there, sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you've won them over. But if they won't listen, take one or two others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. In the first one, they've got something against you. In this one, the second one, Matthew 18, you have something against them. They've done something to hurt you. They've done something to offend you. And in this case, you're still responsible to be the one to go and initiate. If they have something against you, go work it out. If you have something against them, go work it out. The follower of Jesus Christ has a responsibility to be a peacemaker, to be a reconciler, to not avoid and deny, but to try to bring a loving reconciliation or restoration. And in the passage, that one, the second one, Jesus adds, if you can't work it out between the two of you, go get some help. Get someone else involved. Tell them the issue. Let them hear the issue and listen to your problem, get advice, or get counseling. Don't go yourself. Forgive me, it's a gender generalization, but wife, don't go to your friends and your family and tell them how awful he is to you so that they go, yeah, he is awful. That's not what he's saying here. Go together and talk to somebody and try to have them give you some advice and some mediation. God's word would also tell us through the writing of the Apostle Paul, Romans 12:18. You might have already thought of this one. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Live at peace with everyone as much as it depends on you, but that doesn't mean to avoid conflict. Living at peace does not mean that we should always deny that there's a problem. It's about working through the conflicts and the issues with imperfect people in an imperfect world to bring a wholeness to your relationship. The peace there is a wholeness to your relationship, not the absence of conflict which you can achieve by pretending there is not one. It's about a wholeness, restoring it to wholeness. And God would tell us through the apostle, Ephesians chapter 4:15, again the apostle Paul, instead, speaking the truth in love will grow to become in every respect the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. So he's talking about Christians in relationship in the church, but it applies to us in our relationships with all kinds of other people, that we should speak the truth in love. Speak with care and courage and kindness. Speak with love, but speak the truth. Don't avoid the truth. Don't deny or rationalize or lie about it. I love to say there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. That's one of my issues. There's nothing wrong when there's something wrong. All of us have a certain cushion factor where for a little while I think that's okay. Isn't that okay? Please tell me that's okay. It's okay. Thanks. But you know what I mean? But deeper than that, you just can't always be saying it's all okay. Because speaking the truth in love leads to what here? Growth. Growth in the individual? Yeah, probably. But also in the relationship, in the community, in the household. We will grow to become, in every respect, who Christ wants us to be. We will grow together in our relationship when we talk about things, negotiate those things, and speak the truth in love to one another to do it. This is eventually kind of what advice Peterson gives in this one rule for the 12 rules for life. He calls this rule, be precise in your speech. Be precise in your speech, meaning choose your words well. When you need to work through issues and problems, like this big one of the things that will help you is choose your words well. Communicate clearly and honestly. Think what is wrong exactly and try to communicate that with clarity. Think what do I want exactly and communicate that truthfully and with clarity. And do your best to communicate courageously and truthfully, and that will lead to better, healthier relationships in life. Peterson says, one concluding paragraph, don't hide baby monsters under the carpet. They will flourish. They will grow large in the dark. Then when you least expect it, they will jump out and devour you. You will descend into an indeterminate, confusing hell instead of ascending into the heaven of virtue and clarity. Courageous and truthful words will render your reality simple, pristine, well-defined, and habitable. Jesus says, in so many words, don't avoid. Don't deny. If there's an issue between you and someone, go and work it out. Seek to always live at peace in as much as you're able. Speak the truth in love. come back next week. We'll look at another one of these 12 rules for life. They're positive ideas. They are wise. They are from the background of Christian tradition. They're creative and they're profound. And they will help your life and your faith. And we will make the connections with the Word of God together. Amen. Pray with me. So Heavenly Father, we thank you for the grace that you give us in our lives, that we can be transparent, we can talk openly about how it's not always easy and we're not always perfect. We thank you for how a lot of us admit that and can say that because of your grace in our lives and because we know that without you in our lives we wouldn't be anything. We wouldn't be able to stand. We wouldn't have all that we have. It's all because of your grace. So we thank you for the grace that you've given many of us in our lives in working through issues like this in our relationship. And today, Father, for those that are in the thick of it, they live in a house like this, or a metaphorical house in a relationship in their life, I pray that you would continue to give them guidance on how to work through this. Give them grace for people that just are difficult, relationships that are difficult, and continue to direct their steps and make their path straight. And for young people here today, I pray that you would put this in their mind, help them to remember, and help them to follow Jesus Christ and have this as one of the ways that they do that. We ask these things all in Jesus' name. If this is your prayer, if you agree with it, say amen. Amen. God bless you. Have a great